Thank you for joining us for part 3 of the series, Two Become One. If you have any questions about this message or about Crosswind Church, visit our website at www.crosswindchurch.net or email us at info@crosswindchurch.net.
Go ahead and grab your Bibles if you have them. If you don't have your Bible today, that's okay. You can have all of the Bible passages up on the screen for you so you can follow along with us. We'll be in the book of Ephesians today, and somehow this raises. I think here we go. All right. Not too often do I have to raise stuff. Anyway. Today we're in part 3 of the series, Two Become One, where we're looking at what the Bible has to say about marriages. And it's been a long and in some ways challenging series for us to be a part of. As a husband, that's not a very good husband most of the time. It's been hard for me to stand up here and say, hey, here are the areas that I'm weak, and here's the areas that I need to get better in. And last week we spent some time talking about husbands and their responsibility to love their wives as Christ loved the church. I talked with a buddy of mine this last week who came up to help me do some stuff at the church. And he said, man, you could have set up a video camera in the parking lot, and as every man left this sanctuary, they left their heads up low last week. And that's not the point. The point is this. We want to empower you to have marriages that last. If you are married, we want this to be your last marriage. If you're not married, we want the next time you get married to be the last time, or if it's the first time, we want it to be the only time. So whether you're single or married, we hope there's something for you today. And today we get to take a peek into what the Bible has to say to wives. And I don't know if you noticed, but I'm a dude, not a girl, and so I'm going to do my best to talk about the Word of God and what it has to say, and then I'm going to have some help a little bit later when we talk about how to actually apply that. But before we get started, I want to go ahead and go over the rules with you again. Because last week we had some rules when we talked about husbands. This week we need to have rules when we talk about wives. So, husbands today, elbows to yourself. As we talk, what the Bible says about wives, no nudging, no looking. This is not an opportunity for you to start a fight on the way home. That's not what we want you to do. Ultimately, we're all trying to be better husbands. We're all trying to be better wives. And if you're single here with us today, we want you to know what to look for in a husband and a wife. And so there's some great truths for us. So hands to yourself, no arguments, elbows to yourself, that kind of thing, as we kind of get involved in. Now, one of the things that I tell couples when I do premarital counseling with them is in the very first session, we talked about Ephesians 5, which is the text we were in last week. The Bible text will be in this week. We explain it to them. And then I tell them this, I make this statement. It's so important that I make it to them. And I'm going to make it to you today. I look at the bride-to-be that's sitting in front of me. I look at the young lady that's sitting in front of me, and I tell her these words. You are marrying a boy. Well, I tell her, you're marrying a boy. In fact, he's going to think like a boy. He's going to act like a boy. He's going to communicate like a boy, and he's even going to smell like a boy. And the sooner, this is so important, the sooner that you can realize that you're just marrying a boy and not marrying Jesus, the better you'll be. And then I take a look at the groom-to-be, and I make this statement. You need to understand, you're marrying a girl. And I know that she already looks and smells better than you. She's going to think like a girl. She's going to act like a girl. She's going to communicate like a girl. And the sooner you can realize that you're marrying a girl and not Jesus, the better off you're going to be. Because here's the thing that we know. If you've been married for any period of time, you know this statement, right? And that statement is this. There's a difference between boys and girls. There's a difference. We know that. We think differently. We're wired differently. In fact, if we were to be honest with ourselves, every 5-year-old that's at the kids' worship right now knows there's differences between boys and girls. This is why, even if you made a decision to not let guns in your home, your boys will chew guns out of their graham crackers and shoot their brother with them. That's just what they do. It's hardwired in them to be different. And 5-year-olds understand that, and people who have been married for a while understand that, but when you're engaged and you've got the Twitter-pated feeling in your belly, you forget that. It just goes out of your mind. You become brain damaged for just a little while, and you forget all that. And so we need to realize there's these differences. I mean, think about it. You know this, right? If you and your spouse, or you and your boyfriend, or you and your girlfriend, or you, whatever, if you decide you want to go see a movie, likely you would choose 2 totally different types of movies, right? Maybe you experience that difference in communication with one another. Guys communicate differently than girls, and girls differently than guys. That sort of thing. And Nowhere is this difference more pronounced. Nowhere is it more definable than in the way that we love one another. Now, before I get to the way we love one another, I want to talk about this real quick. This difference between men and women, it's good. It's really, really good. God made you that way. God hardwired you men to be different than women. And He hardwired you women to be different than men. And let me tell you, sometimes in our society, we want to kind of blur those lines. And we kind of want to make it something that was never intended to be women. But guys and girls, they're wired differently, and that is a good thing. And for you to say anything other than that is good is to say that God didn't know what He was doing when He made you. No one wants to say that, right? Nowhere is this difference more pronounced in the way that we love one another. And to some degree, we kind of understand this. Because if my wife wants to make me feel loved, she doesn't go buy me flowers. If my wife wants to make me feel loved, she doesn't come and say, Jeremy, I love you. I want you to know how much I love you so you paint my toenails. She shouldn't say that, right? There's things that she does to show love. And sometimes one of the biggest problems that we get into is that you have women who are trying to love men like they want to be loved, and men who are trying to love women like they want to be loved. And as a result, there's a lot of tension. It's not because there's not love, it's because we don't understand these differences and how to work our way through them. Now, there's good news for us. Paul, in the book of Ephesians chapter 5, the text that we started looking at last week, he started to explain that. And so today what I'm going to do is I want to see if we can open up kind of a door, open up a window, if you will, and look into how wives we can better love our husbands and better show our husbands that we love them in ways that are understandable to him. Okay? Now, here's the first little thing. You ready? This may be news to you. It's not just all about sex. It's not. Although it's a little bit about that. Okay? So let's open up Ephesians chapter 5, and we'll read from there. Now, before we dive into this passage about husbands, I want you to read with me again, to put up on the screen, chapter 5, verse 21. And it says this: submitting to one another out of reverence for Christ. And last week when we began this text, what we said was that this one little verse is going to provide the framework for everything that follows after. Remember, in this chapter of this letter to the book to the church in Ephesus, Paul is writing instructions about how to be a good believer, how to be a good Christian, how to be a good person in society. And so he gives you some kind of suggestions and some rules and some commands, things like, hey, don't be foolish. Hey, don't be a drunkard, but instead be filled with the Holy Spirit, right? And how love should kind of permeate every aspect of our lives. And he comes kind of to the end of that section with this verse, submitting to one another out of reverence for Christ. And in the next passage, he starts talking to women. And the reason that we want to start right there, where it says, where he starts talking to our wives, is because we don't like the mutual submission part that comes from verse 21. We like the wives submit to your husband part that comes in verse 22. The problem is that this verse provides a framework for everything that's going to follow after. He's going to give some specific instructions about what it means to submit in a marriage relationship to one another. And last week for the men, we talked about this. We said the way you submit to your wife is you love her like Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. And to understand why that means you submit to your wife, you have to understand the biblical definition of love. We say it here at Crosswind all the time. Love is the radical commitment to the advancement and the well-being of the other. So what it means is that you take her wants, her needs, her desires, you elevate them above your own. You with me? Her wants, her needs, her desires, and elevate them above your own. Well, guess what that is? That's submission. And so he's saying to men, the way you submit to your wife is by loving her like Christ loved the church. Now, we only have a few verses to work with when it comes to wives. For men, we have twice as many verses, and I think it's because maybe we can be a little dense sometimes. But for wives, he gives us just a handful of verses, and so we're going to read them all in one kind of setting, and then we're going to see if we can explain them. He says this, verse 22. Wives, submit to your own husbands as to the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church, his body, and is himself its Savior. Now, as the church submits to Christ, so also wives should submit in everything to their husbands. Now, here's kind of what I know. There's a subset of people in this room, women, and a subset of those women, who when I read this, submit to your husband as to the Lord, inside of you there's something that just kind of goes, "Urgh." Right? And I've talked to enough women to know that we read this verse sometimes, and as women you kind of just go, yeah, but you don't know. And you make statements like, well, if Paul had known my story, then he would say something differently here. Well, if Paul knew my circumstances, then he wouldn't ask me to do that. Before we dive into kind of what this looks like for us as wives, for you all as wives, not for us, not for the husband, right? I realize I'm speaking as a husband, but don't worry, we get help later, okay? To kind of understand that, we have to kind of understand what Christianity did for women in the first century. See, when a first century Greek, or first century Christian, first century Jew read this passage of Scripture, what they understood was the context in which Paul was writing it. You see, in that type of society, which was very patriarchal, very male-dominated, women had very little rights. They had very little importance. Oftentimes they were viewed as objects or as possessions to be had by a man in society. And in a lot of cases, not in all, but in some cases they couldn't own land. In some cases they had no kind of political power. They had very little clout in that day and age. Well, Jesus is going to come along then, and he's going to speak very well about women. In fact, Jesus is going to encourage us to respect our women and to love our women. And we would come along and we would learn through Christ that at the foot of the cross it's all equal. Paul would say there is no male or female. Each have equal access to God. That was something that never happened before. And so women were empowered all of a sudden by Christianity. In fact, I always kind of chuckle when people in the media talk about how Christianity just kind of keeps women down. I want to go, you don't know history. Christianity freed women. Christianity empowered women more so than any other world religion that exists today, and any world religion that existed back then as well. And so in the context of women being empowered, there was still some misunderstanding then as to the roles that men and women play in their marriages. And so Paul is writing, hey, this mutual kind of submission that goes between husband and wives. Wives, you need to recognize some things about your husband, and you need to submit to him. Now, the reason why there's a subset of women in this room that kind of cringe at that is because they've misunderstood the word submit. And it's because society has fed them a bad definition of submit, and because maybe even men in their life, a husband or a father, has at some point put their foot down and said, I'm the man of this house, and you will submit to me. You as women, understandably, just kind of go, I ain't submitting to nothing, right? Stomp your foot all you want to. Point your finger all you want to. I ain't woman, hear me roar. Anything you can do, I can do better, right? Maybe you've heard all that. I mean, come on. The problem is that we misunderstand submit. We think that submit means that now I have to just kind of blindly obey. We think submit means that I have kind of a lesser role in our marriage, or that I'm not as important as he is. Submit means that I have to kind of be a doormat and just be rolled over by any kind of ungodly man that finds their way in my life. And I'm telling you, that's your view of submit. I wouldn't want to do it either. The problem is, that's not what the Apostle Paul is talking about. That's not what Jesus is talking about. What he says is, when you submit to your husband, this is what he means. I want you to look at your husband, and I want you to place his wants, his needs, his desires ahead of your own. Right? I want you to place his wants, his needs, his desires ahead of your own. It doesn't mean you don't have an opinion. It doesn't mean you can't disagree. It doesn't mean that you aren't just as equal as he is. It just means that you are created differently, equal, but different, and for different roles. This is so important. You were created equally, both in the image of God, both with the same value, both with the same access to your Heavenly Father. But you're created for different roles in your marriage. And just I was talking to Jody about this morning, actually. And I said, I think so many women, sometimes they read that and they go, well, that's restricted. I'm created for a different role than my husband is created for. And she makes that, I love it, she is not, it's not restricted at all. It's freeing. It's freeing to know that I don't have to be something that I'm not wired to be. It's freeing to know that I don't have to fulfill a role that I was not created to fulfill. And so what he says is, I want you to submit, wives, to your husband. Place his wants, needs, and desires ahead of your own. I want you to fulfill your equally important role in the marriage as you allow him to fulfill his equally important role in the marriage. And then he makes a statement. He says, submit to your husband as to the Lord. Let me kind of put this in the JIV for you, because I'm from Kentucky and I have to keep things simple. This is what he says. He says, I want you to submit to your husband, and somehow, some way, in the grand scheme of things, when you submit to your husband, you're also submitting to God. The problem is that sometimes we take that and misunderstand that as to mean that my husband is my God. That's not what he's saying. But he's saying that in the same way that when you serve others, it's like you're serving God. In the same way when you serve and submit to your husband, it's like you're serving and submitting to God. Because those are the roles that I've placed you in. He goes on to say some things that are really, really hard. See, what Paul likes to do is he likes to compare marriage to the relationship between Jesus and the church. And next week we'll talk about why that is important. But I just want to read this for you again. He says, for the husband is head of the wife. Ooh, we got problems with that. We'll talk about that in a minute. For the husband is head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church, his body, and is himself the Savior. Now, as the church submits to Jesus, so wives should submit in everything to their husbands. Let me tell you what he means, because we don't get past that husband is head of the wife part. And, ain't nobody head of me, right? I am my own woman. I understand. It sounds weird to hear me saying I'm my own woman, but you know what I mean. Here's what he means. The role that God has made your husband for is a role that takes, and I'm going to use this word, but stick with me, don't check out. A role that assumes authority in the marriage and family relationship. All right? Now, we have problems with that word authority, because no one really likes authority. And so what I like to do when I teach this and explain it is I like to not put words in Paul's mouth, but to replace that word authority, because sometimes you just can't get past it, with another word. You ready for this? This is good. Husbands have responsibility for their family, for their marriage. Husbands have responsibility for it. Now, let me see if I can explain this. Early on in the series, we talked about how we want to refer to the way that God planned marriage, ideally, before sin entered into the world. And so we started the series by looking at Genesis chapter 2, before sin ever entered into the world. And we say, this is what's ideal. We recognize that there is a reality that sin is now entered into the world. We're going to strive for what's ideal while embracing what is real. Maybe you remember that? Okay? Well, when sin entered into the world, I want to ask you a couple questions. The person that was tempted by Satan in the Garden of Eden was who? Eve, right? The woman was tempted, right? And the woman that sinned, correct, first. And then she gave some to her husband. She tempted him, and he ate, and he sinned as well, right? In fact, Adam would say later, God, it's really the woman's fault. Really, it's all her fault, right? If she hadn't done this, we wouldn't have any problems at all. See, here's the problem with that line of thinking. In chapter 3 of the book of Genesis, God knows that man and woman have sinned, but he comes to meet them in the garden anyway. He comes to find them. And as he's walking in the garden in the cool of the day, he calls out for who? Straighten out that question. Adam. Calls out for Adam. Hey, Adam, where are you? Now, I always think that's a funny question because he's God. He knows everything. He knows exactly where Adam is. Right? Adam comes out of his hiding place, and he says, God, we heard you in the garden, and we hid from you because we were naked and shamed. And God's question to Adam was this: who told you you were naked? And Adam said, well, you know, that tree, there was fruit, and that woman you gave me, she ate of the fruit. And here's what I want you to understand from that entire passage. Because then God would go and he'd question Eve afterwards, and he'd question the serpent afterwards, and then he'd hand out punishments. But I want you to understand something. When God comes to hold man and woman accountable for their sin, who does he ask for? The man. This is important. This means that man has responsibility for your marriage. It means that man has responsibility for your family. It means that one day, oh man, I said this last week, and please hear it again. One day, you'll stand before your Savior and give an account of how you led your family. Last week we talked about that. We said, if that feels heavy, it should. If that feels just a little bit frightening, it should. Now, I want to turn the script, or flip the script just a little bit, because wives, here's what I want you to understand. One day, wives, one day your husband is going to stand before God and give an account of how he led his family. Now, when you understand that principle, It makes submission just a little bit easier. What he says is this: submit to your husband as to the Lord, because husband has been given authority. The husband has been given responsibility. The husband is going to give an account. And when you recognize that he knows he's going to give an account, and you recognize he's going to give an account, then by gum, I'm going to make it as easy on him as I can to help him lead our family. And I'm not going to get in the way. And I'm going to be willing to place his wants, needs, and desires ahead of my own. Now, let's go back to verse 21 real quick, because it says, submitting to one another out of reverence for Christ. Watch what happens. When the husband loves his wife as Christ loved the church, and is radically committed to her advancement and well-being, and the wife submits to her husband, is radically committed to his advancement and his well-being, and guess whose needs end up getting met? Both of you. It's like God just planned it all out perfectly. Paul was brilliant. And so now here comes the question. So if I'm supposed to submit to my husband as to the Lord, if my relationship with my husband is to relate to Christ's relationship to the church, then how do I submit to him? How do I do what Paul has asked me to do? The problem is that we get to the end of verse 24, Paul doesn't give us any more instructions. Maybe it's because he just assumed that you knew. It's wise. What that looked like. Maybe it's just because he assumed that you knew that what the roles were. You're both equal in the eyes of God. You're both just as important, but made for different roles. Maybe Paul kind of understood that. But what we see is that we jump ahead to verse 33, the very last verse of the passage. We see that Paul gives us some stunning insight. We'll move quickly through this. Look at verse 33 of chapter 5. It says this: however, let each of you, who's talking to men here, love his wife as himself. That was last week. We talked about that. And let the wife see to it that she loves her husband. Is that what it says? It's not what it says, is it? What does it say? And let the wife see that she respects her husband. See, what Paul is going to tap into is something that I think as women, as wives, y'all miss, and I think even sometimes as men, we miss it. We can't put it into words. But here's the thing that I want you to understand. A few years ago, back in 2004, 12 years ago actually, a woman by the name of Shanti Feldhahn wrote a book called For Women Only. And I'm going to give you some stats from that book. And what started out as a conversation with a few of her friends, kind of informal, kind of evolved into a survey where she talked to thousands and thousands and thousands of men. And one of the things that she discovered in this little study was this: 74% of the men that she interviewed, that's 3 out of every 4, when asked the question, would you rather be loved or respected in your relationships? 74% of the men said, we would rather be respected than loved. Now this is amazing, right? In fact, I talked about this in my premarital couple counseling, and it's always fun to watch the brides. The bride-to-bees, when you say, would you rather be loved or respected? Almost always the bride goes, when they hear their husband or their fiancé say they'd rather be respected, they kind of go, not loved? Right? See, here's the thing. Men, without even knowing it, equate respect with love. They equate respect with love. In fact, there are books written, one by Average named Love and Respect, and I encourage you to check this out, because he wrote the book a few years ago, but Paul actually wrote this verse a couple thousand years ago when he said, wives, you need to love, or husbands, you need to love your wives. Wives, you need to respect your husband. Now, there's a couple pushbacks we always get when we talk about what respect looks like and why you should respect. The first pushback we always get is, but I do respect my husband. My husband is respected by me. And that may be true, but I bet that there are ways that you find that you disrespect your husband you had no idea. So I want to give you a little tool. Actually, Shanti gives you the tool in her book, but I want to give you a little tool to help you know whether or not you're respecting your husband or not. Here it is, ready? If your husband is always angry, or if your husband is yelling a lot, then he's feeling disrespected. Because what psychologists have taught us is that anger is the emotional response that comes when someone feels disrespected. Let me give you the other side of it. Men, if your wife cries a lot, if your wife is sad a lot, it's because she feels unloved. Because love is a natural barometer, or crying, is a natural barometer for feeling love. And crying and sadness is the emotional response that comes from not being loved. Now, what's interesting, women, is you fully expect it. It's okay for you to cry. But when our husband gets angry, we think something must be wrong with him. The thing is this. Anger is not an appropriate response to feeling disrespected, but it is the response for feeling disrespected. If your husband is angry all the time, or if he is yelling all the time, then likely he feels disrespected. The second pushback that we get, and just a little statistic, 81% of men say if an argument occurs, they feel disrespected rather than feeling unloved. 81%. All right? The second pushback we get is this. I love this one. Well, my husband doesn't deserve respect. He's not a believer. He doesn't support our family. He's lazy. He's good for nothing. He's addicted to things. Whatever it is, he doesn't deserve my respect. Here's the problem that I have with that line of thinking. Paul's command to respect your husband is not a conditional command. That means it is not contingent upon him doing anything. Paul didn't say, respect your husband as long as he loves you like Christ loved the church. See, I hear that a lot. I'll respect you when he starts loving me. I'm sorry, that's not what the Bible says. The Bible also doesn't say to love your wife like Christ loved the church when she respects you. They're not conditional upon them doing anything. It is something that you choose to do. This is why I say all the time, love and respect are not only feelings, they're choices that you make. And whether they deserve it or not, you are to respect your husband. He may not deserve it. That doesn't change your responsibility. I like to put it this way. Wives, you expect unconditional love, don't you? You expect love no matter what you've done, no matter what you've said. You expect your husband to love you. In the same way, you need to show unconditional respect to your husband. If you want to show that you love him, show him that kind of respect. There's a few areas that I think sometimes we miss in this area of respect. I want to point those out, and then I'm going to ask Jody to come help me out as we try to apply this. The first one is I need you to respect your husband's judgment. Respect your husband's judgment. And by the way, single ladies, this is true whether you're married or not. There are men in your life, respect their judgment. Let me tell you something. One of the men that was surveyed in Sean's book, he made a statement. He said, my judgment is respected everywhere else but at home. At work, my judgment is respected. I can remember there was a time at First Baptist Hayden where we were doing a lot of community events with other churches, and things were going really, really well. And someone brought up the idea, my children's minister actually, she brought up the idea, maybe we should do a community-wide vacation Bible school. And I just kind of sat back and watched, and the discussion began around the table. We'll invite other denominations, we'll get different people involved, we'll have it in one of the schools, a non-church location, we'll think we'll have more people that come. And there was something inside of me that just didn't sit well with that. And I can't tell you what it was, I can't describe what it was, I can't even explain what it was. But I just kind of said, hey guys, I don't understand, but something inside me says this is a bad idea. And everyone at the table in unison went, okay, next idea then. Because I said my judgment, my better judgment says this is not something we should do. Everybody around the table went, okay, then we won't do it. And I went, man, that type of respect. So many men get that at work, but they don't get it at home. And that's why it's so easy for men to become workaholics. Is because they're respected. But at home we're not. This is why pornography is such a big draw for men. Women, you need to understand this. It has nothing to do with sex. It has nothing to do with naked women. It doesn't have anything to do with that. What it has to do with is the woman on the screen respects me. The woman on the screen doesn't talk back to me. She doesn't put me down. She doesn't make fun of me. The woman on the screen is always satisfied by me. You understand? It's all a fantasy. It's not real. It's made up. It's in our mind. That's why so many men escape to that. That's why so many men want to come home and go out to the shop and do work, or come down and sit on their couch and flip on the TV and veg out. This is why people get on the internet and escape when they're home. Ladies, if your man is doing this, I'm telling you, it's because his judgment is respected everywhere but at home. Respect his judgment. Number 2, respect his abilities. Respect his abilities, even when they're not there. I've told you over and over again, I am not a handy person. I was just not built with the handy gene. I don't know how to do things that like to repair things on my house. I don't know. I may be getting a little better, but I'm not allowed to have power tools because I might cut myself. It's just a bad situation. And when we moved up to Alabama, my father-in-law's here today, and I'm going to tell a story with him here. When my father-in-law who lives in Morris. And he is such a wonderful help. My father-in-law is amazing help. And he would come and was willing to come and do things around the house. Well, what Jody started doing is Jody started asking him to do things around the house. And that was fine. That was wonderful. But there was a little part of my ego that's kind of went, well, hang on a minute. I can do things too. Right? And then I would know he was coming to the house to work. And so I'd like take off work so I could come and help him do it because it's my house and I should do things. And I can remember finally sitting down with Jody and going, look, I want your dad to do things around the house for you. He's better at that stuff than I am. But do me a favor, just because I need you to respect my abilities, just ask me. Do you have time to do this? Can you do this? Do you know how to do this? And when I say no, which is going to happen, then ask me that. It's just a way that you respect. I remember when we lived in Fort Worth, Texas, we got a brand new dishwasher to go into our house. And the dishwasher was delivered, and it was pretty, shiny, and it was going to get all our dishes clean. It was going to be awesome. And I can remember it's sitting in our kitchen, and Jody looks at me, and she goes, hey, you should call your friend Zach and Clay to come help you install it. And I went, I can install it myself. I don't need anybody else to come install it. You know what you're talking about. Listen, respect his abilities, even when he doesn't have them. One of the men surveyed made this statement so true. Y'all, this is not acceptable in a lot of male circles. So I may even catch some ridicule from them for saying this, but this is true. One man who was interviewed said this. He said, the male ego is one of the most fragile things on the planet. Women, you've been entrusted with that. Respect his abilities. Because oftentimes, when you disrespect his abilities, society doesn't allow him to come and to call you out on it. Society doesn't allow him to go and to be upset about it. Society says, you got to suck it up, rub some dirt on it, get back in the game. But inside, there's a little bit of piece of us that's been disrespected. Builds. Respect his abilities. Lastly, respect him in public. Of all the men that were surveyed, the predominant response said this, you know, at the very least, you can respect me in front of other people. Even if she badmouths me at home, even if she doesn't respect my abilities, at the very least, when she's in front of other people, she can just not talk bad about me. When we were in Texas, Jody became a part of a women's group that began to get together and share and that sort of stuff. And it never really occurred to me, every time she would go to meet with the group, or every time she'd go out with friends, there was something inside of me that was just like, makes me a little nervous, right? And it wasn't until recently that looking back on that, I kind of realized, well, what made me nervous was I wasn't certain what she was going to say about me. I wasn't certain how she was going to portray me to her friends. And I couldn't control it and didn't want to control it, but at the same time, I want her to respect me in front of other people. Now, ladies, you may initially kind of go, well, I respect my husband in public. Let me ask you this question. Ooh, it's tough. Do you make fun of him in public? Do you poke fun of him in front of other people? See, I'm not saying you can't poke fun of your husband. I'm not saying you can't make fun of your husband. You may do that. We joke around with each other all the time. Jody and I do. But you know what? It took me a little while to get over something that she was doing in our marriage early on. She still does it. I just got over it. That's the only difference. She makes fun of my driving. She does. But can I tell you something? I'm a bad driver. I'm not a very good driver. But she likes to put out that I've got more tickets than her, and I've raced more cars than her, and I'm not as good as her, and she has a little bit of backseat driveritis, and so she'll kind of tell me, listen, and all of that is deserved because I'm not a very good driver. But there was a period of time where every time we would talk about driving, she would tell everybody that would listen how bad I was. And I was like, you know what, whether true or not, that just kind of eats away at me just a little bit. If you're constantly putting your husband down in front of other people, I'm telling you, it may be subtle, it may be small, but it will eat away at who he is. In fact, let me see if we can put the shoe on the other foot. If you're okay with making fun of your husband in public, then allow him to make fun of the 10 pounds you put on. Allow him to talk about the extra hair that you have that you don't want. Right? Allow him publicly, watch. Allow him publicly to make fun of your cooking or your cleaning. And I'm telling you something, there's something inside of you that goes, heck no! Why is it okay you want your husband to alter his standards in front of other people, but you refuse to alter yours? Respect his abilities, respect him publicly, and respect his judgment. Now, when it comes to applying this, when it comes to the difficulties that come from this, I got to think about it. In fact, this is something I've wrestled with all week and thought of different things. How can I stand up here and tell you what to do? I'm not a woman. And so this morning, actually, I called Jody and said, Jody, I've got some application, I've got some points that we can bring across, but I think it would be better to come with you. And so I want to invite my wife here, Jody, to come and sit here, and we'll do just a little interview. And as she's coming up, I want to tell you, just like I am not the perfect husband, she is not the perfect wife, and she knows that. She'll tell you about that. I was going to try to get it down for you. I'm sorry. Okay. And so let's get you a mic. So I just wanted to ask Jody a few questions and see if she might have some insight for us. You can sit there, sweetie, if you want. Jody, of all the things we talked about here today, which was a lot, what is the most challenging way, or what's the most challenging area that you have to show respect, and why you think that is? Is there a challenging area for you? Maybe you guys know that one.
Well, I feel like I struggle with all three, but probably if I were to pick one, judgment would be it, and that's because we were raised differently, and both raised in Christian homes, but my parents probably allowed me to be a little bit too headstrong, and Dad would probably nod his head and say yes, I'm pretty stubborn. And so I go into a marital relationship and friendships and everything. I'm a lot better than I used to be, so you don't know that other side of me, but I'm very stubborn. And I don't mind telling someone that I disagree and that I think they're doing it wrong. And so I would do that with a lot of decisions that, and I still do, and I'm struggling with it, and I'll be honest with you, but with decisions that Jeremy would make about our home or anything and I'm very free-spirited too, and so I'm very fly-by-the seat of my pants and adventurous, and so I'm like, yeah, let's go do that. And Jeremy's very, I don't know, and so I'm like, you don't trust God, and he's like, no, I don't play that card. So I think that's probably my biggest one is judgment, because I entered into this relationship with this idea of I'm a born leader and I'm supposed to make decisions, and I was very independent in college, and I was the president of everything in high school, and so I assumed that I'm supposed to make decisions, and so when someone else comes in, I'm like, I'm not sure about that, and so that's probably my biggest struggle.
I think one of the things that came up in the study of this when it comes to respecting the judgment is that there's a two-sided sort of this. It doesn't mean that I just used the force there. It doesn't mean that her opinion isn't important. It doesn't mean that I don't value her opinion. Her opinion is incredibly important to me. But the thing that occurs when you don't respect your husband's judgment is eventually they will start handing the decisions off to you. In fact, if you're in a relationship where you feel like you have to make all the decisions for your family and your husband never wants to make a decision, it may be that, number one, he's handed that to you, and number two, you've taken it from him. Right? And that doesn't mean, watch, that doesn't mean that her opinion isn't valid. It doesn't mean that her opinion doesn't count. Her opinion does count. Her opinion does matter. But at the end of the day, she realizes that I'm going to be held responsible for our family.
It also doesn't mean that when you decide you want to give that back to them, that he's just immediately going to do it. Like we jokingly argue, like Jeremy doesn't even like to make decisions about where we go eat. And I'll say, just make a decision. And it's because of years of me just making the decision and taking that from him. So
I'll say one more thing about this, and this is just a personal confession of mine. Sometimes very stupidly on my part, I've said this out loud. Most of the time I keep it in my head. But I have said this out loud. When we'll get into a disagreement or an argument about, and I feel like my judgment is being questioned by her or disrespected by her, my response is to say this, hopefully not out loud, although I said it out loud. Well, it doesn't matter what I think or say, you're just going to do what you want to anyway. Bad to say out loud, but what internally I'm feeling is, my judgment doesn't matter to you. My judgment doesn't matter to you. Okay, let me ask you this. This talk about love and respect. Paul points this out 2,000 years ago. Men want to be respected. Women want to be loved. And there's a struggle with that because men equate love with respect so often. Tell me, in what ways has that truth changed your perspective on marriage and changed your perspective on loving your husband?
It's a daily battle that I'm aware of, again, because of the personality that I'm built to have. But more importantly, recognizing daily that the way he feels affectionately not by the ways that I feel affectionately connected. And so, we've done studies before, and you probably have as well, on love languages and things like that, and respect is demonstrated in various types of love languages. And I'm really animated because I'm a teacher, and one of the things that I've had to learn probably in even the past 2 or 3 years is my body language says a lot. I can say, okay, I agree with you, and my face isn't saying it because I'm mad or frustrated or I don't agree. And so Jeremy's really good at reading my body language, so I've had to really work on that.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That doesn't count, right? Sorry.
And because it's a weakness, we've also had to adjust the way we communicate with each other, so he'll give me time to adjust my body language to the point, and I know this sounds ludicrous to some of you, but sometimes some of our tough conversations are had via email and text message because I don't even want to talk to him on the phone because I don't want him to hear my tone that I haven't gotten control over yet. So, and it works for us because I can verbally, I'm a great writer, so sometimes I write too much. And so I can express myself to him in words without him having to hear, elevated tone or passive aggressive or anything like that. And I also can go back and reread and go, yeah, I don't really feel that way. I need to rethink what I just said and so forth.
Well, what you mentioned, one, obviously sometimes we have conversations via text message, which is that sometimes we can see each other, but we have to text.
He's left the store in the mall before. I'm like, go away. I need to talk to you, but go away.
Listen, what are some other practical things you can tell a wife? What are some things that they can do to show respect for her?
One of the things you mentioned to me that is important is assuming the best, and we personally, individually struggle with that. We've been married 15 years, and we've known each other for nearly 20. And so there's a lot of things that we know about each other and about our past, and we assume things. I throw on him probably way too often that he was an only child. And although the truth be told, I really was too. My brother and I are nearly 7 years apart. So there was 7 years of my life where it was me and my parents. And so that probably has a little bit to do with it as well. And so I assume that Jeremy wants things for Jeremy and not just for what's best. And so I need to assume the best of his intentions. I need to be better about praising him publicly. And I do with him a lot because I grew up again. You bring so much into your marriage and your past. My family thrives on picking on each other. And it's like our affectionate love language.
Our love language is put you down.
And that's fun for us, but I also need to realize there needs to come a point where I need to make sure the people that I'm around are not seeing me as someone who is trying to be over my husband and speaking praise, but I need to be someone who's affectionately proud of him and thankful for him. And I've read several books that have reminded me of how that can be perceived, because there's so many times you're interacting and talking in front of people that you'll never see again, and you're making that first impression of, wow, she has no respect for her husband at all, and I need to be aware of that.
With regard to the first thing, I just want to address this. We talk about this at church a lot. When there's a difference between what's expected and what actually occurs, we have a choice what to fill that expectation with. We can fill it with distrust, or we can fill it with the worst or skepticism, or we can choose to fill it with the best. And that's what she was saying, assume the best about each other. When there's a difference between what actually occurs and what's expected as a wife, even as a husband, we choose to fill that with the best. Well, there was a reason. Well, that there was a purpose behind it, rather than just assuming the worst about it. And with praising him publicly, my wife says a lot of great things about me, and I don't hardly ever hear them. She says them to you and to other people. The other day, she posted on Facebook something, you may have seen it. She had a blender explode at the house in the morning, and mornings are crazy at her house, and I just came in and cleaned it up because I didn't want there to be a mess in the kitchen, and because I know she needed to get out the door, and I wanted what's best for her, and that sort of stuff. And she went on social media and just said, hey, my husband came to my rescue today, and he's awesome. And I just told her this morning in my office, like I didn't realize until I verbalized it how much that meant to me. Just a little public, I want everybody to know how great I think my husband is. Because there's a lot of days, just to be honest with you, wives, I don't think I'm a great guy. And I don't think I'm a great husband. And I would probably be right. Okay? But when she says it, it means a lot to me. So,
You're right. We had defined for us probably a decade ago, Jeremy and the team of ministers came up with that definition he shares with you often about love being a radical commitment to the advancement of well-being. And I think that's one of the decisions you just have to make is it's not about you. We step in the circle of we, and so I've got to make decisions that show that I'm committed to his well-being. And that doesn't just mean that I put food on the table. It means I need to know his weaknesses, and I need to pray for them. And that's another thing that as I've grown in my faith, I've learned too. When you pray for someone because they're different from you, don't pray that God will change them. Pray that God will change you so that you can better interact with them, and so that you can better them, and you can bring them to a stronger relationship with the Lord, and so that you can love them the way that he designed for you to have a loving relationship. And so I'm a very big advocate of praying for specifics. I know Jeremy mentioned ago, like he's show pony versus workforce mentality, and
I'm a show pony, not a workforce.
But I know what his weaknesses are in other areas as well, and I can choose to pick those scabs, or I can choose to leave them alone and do all that I can to protect them. And that goes along with public treatment. Like I can decide whether or not I'm going to say things to him that are going to encourage him, or say things that are going to send him home worrying about whether or not he made the right decision on this particular decision at work, or decision with our children, and so forth and so on. And so everything matters. And I also know my weaknesses. And we've got several books that we can recommend to you. That one of the couples that write that Jeremy and I both have read is Shannon Etheridge and her husband. And one of the books she wrote is Captivating. And I love this book so much for women because it's this whole idea of, yes, we are built to have this captivating heart and have this knight in shining armor, but he built us that way because God wants to be our knight in shining armor. And we need to realize that we don't need to expect our husbands to come up with all of these great things, this knight in shining armor approach to how to love us. God wants to love us that way. And so when you get frustrated because you forgot to buy flowers on your anniversary, well, remember all the amazing other things that he did for you, and that what Christ has done for you. And that knight in shining armor is the same way that you should look at your husband, is that somebody who's invincible and that you respect and that you think can, conquer the dragon and enslay, the villain. And so one other thing I wanted to say with the Bible study we with the women on Sunday morning right now, we're talking about words that you say and how powerful they are. And our biggest thing that we try to employ is the acronym THINK. When you say something, is it true? Is it helpful? Is it inspiring? Is it necessary? And is it kind? And we live in a world right now where a lot of people just say things because it has to be said. Well, but sometimes it's not necessary. Did you have to make that jab, or did you have to bring up that topic, or did you have to revisit that past? And okay, maybe it's necessary to be said, but did you say it with a kind heart and with a loving redirection and so forth? And so those are things I wanted to kind of talk about.
As we conclude, we're out of time, but I just wanted to say this. I didn't invite Jody up here so that we could tell you how to be married. We're still figuring it out. In fact, one of the things that I tell people all the time is this is why God intended marriage to be for a lifetime. It's because that's how long it takes to figure it out, right? And so we are journeyers with you, and we want you to learn from the things we've done incorrectly. And together, we hope to do things a little better in the future, along with you. And so whether you're here today, you've been married for 50 years, or you're newly single, or you're not married yet, whatever category you fall in, I want you to understand that Paul had it right. He said, it's very clear. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. Wives, submit to your husband as to the Lord. Because we ought to love our bodies, love our wives as we love our own bodies. We ought to respect